There's a very common experience I've noticed over the years in the individuals I work with. It's so common, I actually call it regret in the rearview mirror. And this is when people look back on their life and regret the choices they made. I should have done this and I shouldn't have done that. I should have turned left when I turned right. Well, this is a really common place that we all struggle at. And today we wanted to take a deeper look at that. And Steve, God bless his soul, has agreed to treat us to an experience that we can kind of dive into to open this up. So Steve, how are you? And welcome.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Hi, everybody. Yeah, when you asked me if there was anything on my heart that I wanted to talk about or what was coming up in my life, I had this like dark, shadowy figure look around the corner and say, well, do you really want to talk about me? I don't know. And what I've been coming up to lately is this feeling that like I missed a turn in my life. Like to your point, like I went left and I should have gone right. That there are things in my life that used to mean a whole lot to me that for all of the reasons of life you grow and you move on from. But I have this nagging feeling like I made a huge mistake. And for me, it was around sort of my music career as a musician, a music educator, as a younger man through college. And there were reasons why I didn't continue on that path. And now, later in the evening or when I'm listening to music and in maybe a little bit more of a sensitive space, I have this overwhelming feeling like I screwed up, honestly, to just get really blunt about it. But also what feels weird, Jeffrey, is like on the other side of it, I live like a really rich and full life. And I have a lot of things that I'm really proud of. But there's this thing in there saying, dude, you missed it. You missed this opportunity. This used to mean so much to you. So that's the scary shadow monster that you've coaxed out for us to talk about today, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling this way, which is why I think it's going to be a useful topic.
Absolutely.
So, Jeffrey, what's wrong with me?
Nothing, except you volunteered to do this show with me. Other than that, there's nothing wrong. The idea that first of all, it is really common, and most of the time, this kind of regret feels, at least in the moment when people are in it, like it's unfixable. Like, okay, I changed from my music career to another avenue in life and a career, and I'll never get that time back. I can never go and incorporate this again. So we look at it as a loss. And, to touch on one of our favorite topics here, it also activates shame, right? Because here we are feeling blaming that, why did I do that? Why did I abandon me? Or why did I listen to them? Or why did I not listen to them? Of course, almost all the time we make decisions based upon the best information we have at the moment and our own internal capacity to go with what we feel is right versus how much we are influenced by other people. So sometimes we choose a different way because something told us to actually take a detour. So let's dive into this a little bit more with you, Steve. So you changed from being someone whose life and career was going to be all in music to going into teaching and then going into video and audio and educational productions. What made you at the time decide to divert from music as the sole focus?
Ooh, good question. One of the most tangible answers is that music school eliminated the joy of music in me. It became so stressful, and I was always not doing enough or not pushing enough or not better than the next person next to me in my seat, or never practicing enough that I felt like I was suffocating. I've never said that to anybody, but I felt like I was suffocating.
So you really turned away from music to help preserve you. No, excuse me. You turned away from the experience music had become through the process of getting educated in grad school, right? Like, it killed the joy, it killed the fun, the creativity in a certain way, and it made it become a much more active engineering, precision, thought, theory. It probably moved from something feeling spontaneous and organic and expressive to something that felt much more compounded and made and assembled and had to have all these parts. And I could see that one's individuality could feel kind of pressed upon in that, right? Like, there's no room to just freely create in that. It feels like I have to comport myself and contort myself to fix this idea of the educator. By the way, as an aside, I had to unlearn some of what I learned in graduate school, because graduate school taught me to be really obsessional. Not that I was not obsessional before, that I was, but boy, did it improve on that. And it just made me feel like, oh, there's got to be a right way to do this. And if you're not doing it the right way, then you're totally wrong. So a lot of people find that what they learn in graduate school is both helpful and tremendously hindering, because it can give us this whole judgment, shame issue, criticism issue about how far we're not, how perfectly or imperfectly we are imitating our mentors, our instructors, our professors, our ideals. So at the time that you decided to shift away from music, was there any sense of, oh my God, I'm going to lose this? Or did you have a sense, well, I'll just keep this in my life, but not as the focus of my profession. I'll just keep it in my life. Did you have any clarity to it? Or at that time, did you say, I'm done with music?
It's interesting because I put down aspects of it in the performance side of things that I was doing and focused on teaching. I was out of college and needed to make money, and teaching was a way to do that. So I taught music for years. But that was a joyless activity looking back, which I left and then moved into media production. And actually the video thing, as you mentioned, was sort of the second iteration of that. I actually went to graduate school for music production and worked in Los Angeles in recording studios. So music was still there. I just changed the packaging. So the shift away, and maybe this is part of the regret that I feel now, like the shift away feels so far in the distance, right? It's all those little steps you take along the way. Like, one of the steps early on didn't feel like that big of a step away. But now, 25 years later, looking back, it's hard to draw that line. And that's there's pieces in there that have that question of like, maybe you should have gone this way, or maybe you should have done this, or maybe the professors around you should have helped focus you on the things about music that you really cared about, because teaching wasn't one of them and only burnt me out further. So a long way to answer your question.
When you fantasize about, well, maybe I should have continued music, you fantasize about how your life would be different. If I had not taken this left turn, if I had just kept going, my life would be this, this, and this now.
It's more that like a thing that brought me joy then and still brings me a lot of joy now is something that I feel very far away from. I could have been I could have been something comes to my mind, whatever that something is, whatever I was leaning towards. That wasn't what I was lining up to be back then anyway.
So a couple more questions on this. And I'm sharing this because our audience can sort of also feel into some of these themselves. Is there part of you that's searching for happiness and is wondering if you'd be happier or more satisfied if your life was more music-centric? than it is now?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
when you said that, it didn't be like, no, that's not true. I was like, yeah, that could totally be true, right?
Hmm.
Looking for a life in some ways that might be easier or have more happiness in it. Sure.
And is there anything about, if you were to be more music centric right now, that other people would look at you differently, or you would look at yourself differently?
I've never thought about what the other people looking at me side of the coin. So it must be I would view myself differently.
So
It's
how
not
would
externalized.
how would you view yourself differently?
I don't know. Let's be a tangent. Let's see where this goes.
Okay.
I think I have gifts to give around my love and understanding of music that I realize I may never give. I don't know if I answered your question. I don't even know
Yes.
if I fully remember what your question is, but that's what popped out of my mouth.
Okay. Well, I like that. I like that. I'll go with that. Right. So we're getting a little closer to it right now. So instead of just shame focused, I messed up, I messed up, I messed up. We're now in touch with the desire. I want to offer my gifts. And feeling from inside, what feels true and aligned for you is that it feels like you have some gifts with music, that it is such a part of your DNA, part of how you appreciate things and look at things, and it's woven into you. So there's hope. There is the desire to share gifts. But here's where shame enters at the end, when it says, yeah, but I don't think you will now. The boat's left the dock. You're gone. You're not going to have the chance. And I'm wondering if that's actually true, or whether there might be ways for you to share some of what you want to share without having to go back and become a music major or teach in a university setting, but to really move towards what lit your soul up before graduate school, because you had a relationship with music from childhood, right? So there's some joy, some life force that graduate school kind of squeezed out of you, stomped out of you. But do you have a sense of whether that still lives and breathes in you?
It absolutely does.
Where can you feel it in your body right now?
It's in my chest. It's in my heart.
Okay. And if you just let your attention go there, feel the region in your chest and your heart, what do you notice? What qualities do you notice are there present for you right now?
Awe and wonder and joy. I mean, all the things I get when I'm exploring and discovering a Bach partita, and the things are becoming clear to me, or I'm reading something and learning something, and I'm, understanding the music from that heart space. All of those same emotions are there.
Okay. So now we're getting onto something deeper. So one of the ways that I could frame this is music allowed you to access your heart. And then it kind of broke your heart, or at least the field of music did. Not music, but how you had to get squeezed. And it seems to me that you're aware that your gifts also involve not just what you do in educational programs or what you do on my podcast or yours, but the idea that there's something else, another quality that's in you and waiting to be expressed. Now, the difference between regret in the rearview mirror and what I will point out as an alternative, regret in the rearview mirror is we only see things with regret. Oh, I missed it. I can't go back to that turn. It's 50 years ago or 20 years ago or 2 years ago. It's done, or that relationship's over. And so all that we can do is feel the grief and judgment of loss, right? Why did I do this? So not only do we not have music, but now we're blaming ourselves for not having music, and we're saying what a scoundrel we were. Well, we weren't kind to ourselves. We sold ourselves out or did whatever that was. And again, it compounds the blame and the grief. versus you're getting back in touch with something that must have not been safe to get in touch with for a long time. Now, the story that I make up is that you loved music. That kind of got crushed out of you. And then you probably left music feeling a little less than fully whole because you went into music to be successful, to apply your love, to get your degree, and to make a living. And at some point you had to decide, damn, I've invested this time, this money, all this energy, and I'm not only not happy, I'm miserable. And so that in and of itself is a shock and a pain for our system because we've invested time and energy in it. And also we've invested some of our identity in this. I'm going to be someone in music. That's what I'm going to be. I was going to be a psychologist. I had a plan. I was envisioning that. So there is grief with that. And sometimes that becomes tender enough that we put the whole incident on the side. It just feels painful and unhappy. And I'm here now and I don't want to look back. But something has been calling you back a little bit, right? And I want to celebrate that because to me, that is the return of life and vitality. That's the return of something you love trying to find its way from the ground up into the sunlight, to find a way to reemerge in your life. Now, what's extra is the regret. Because the regret is just a slight offshoot of shame. Like I can regret not doing something. I'm sorry that I didn't do that. It would have been nice to do it, but I have all these other things. It's balanced. Versus I can't believe I did this. I gave this up. How stupid was I? That was so important for me. I just turned my back on myself. And that is, by the way, what shame will get us to do at times. But I'm not even sure that you did this out of shame. It feels like you did this because you were trying not to feel worse. You left music because being in it was actually making you feel worse about you and probably breaking your heart, not filling it. First of all, just how does this land so far?
The realization that the impetus for it was self-protection feels freeing, honestly, for the first time in math, I don't know, 25 years. It's freeing.
Good.
And I'm acutely aware of me in this podcast, sort of taking my emotional clothes off for everybody.
Yay!
And I'm also acutely aware that others are like, well, how does this relate to me? So maybe that's my shame about, are other people going to find this podcast about Steve's inner world interesting? Well, what I want to just check into and go into is just like, sort of like understanding the mechanisms at play and just like us starting to begin to turn the lens. Not only, we can keep talking about me, that's fine, but also just starting to turn the lens outwards so we can help our listeners see these patterns or understand the mechanisms of regret and nervous system protection at play.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that, but I just want to reassure you that what you shared was helpful, even though it activated some shame for you, because it was vulnerable enough that I think lots of people could see themselves reflected in parts of what you talk about. They may not have seen themselves in the whole story, but parts. We have all made decisions that we have all looked back on with not the fondest memories. And sometimes they're just right. I shouldn't have gone out with that person. It was a very destructive and unhappy relationship. But sometimes we make decisions like you did here because it was necessary for your happiness, for your return to joy, right? And what I loved is just reconnecting with what is in your heart from music is that vitality, that love, that energy, that appreciation, that vitality. It feels like you can almost feel that bubbling up. Now, we all also have shame. All of us do, whether we know it or not. And shame is the main driver when we're looking at regret through the rearview mirror. Because shame will only look at my life now. Everything would have been different and better if I had not made that decision. But what people don't do when they're in the regret and the rearview mirror often is to understand the context of who made the decision back then, right? Like a 27-year-old me is going to make a very different decision than a 57 or a 67-year-old me, right? Is that by living in wisdom, I'm going to have different inputs. I'm going to have different resources. I'm going to know different things about myself. And I may be more comfortable saying what I need or less comfortable. But at that time, you weren't really turning away from music. I want to make that clear. You were turning away from what became the work of music, which was never the joy, right? And to me, what you noticed, and this was healthy, is it became further and further from what you had gone into music from the love, from the enjoyment and wanting to get better at it, wanting to understand it and really nerd out on it. But the idea was of appreciation and love. But at the end, it feels like you were doing everything out of compliance. This is what I have to do. And it is not boring. It's boring and it's not life affirming and it doesn't give me joy and energy and happiness. I'm just checking the boxes and doing something that feels mundane, not very creative, more of a struggle. And when you're teaching, which can be very powerful, you're not also creating, right? Because that's part of what you loved in music, not the performance piece, but the expressive piece of it. So when we look back through regret, we look through the lens of shame and we only see what we think are the outcomes of this decision, even though we can't really be positive because our life is impacted by so many things, what we decide and what we don't do and who's around us and who's not around us. There's so many variables. But it sounded like you could also get in touch, even for a moment, with this idea that you weren't bad. You were just trying to find a way to back to yourself where you didn't have to feel as depressing and as soulless from what you were doing. And maybe you needed all these years as a hiatus to begin to return to it without as much pain, without as much resentment. And again, that wasn't from turning away from the life. It was what you did as part of it, which is because it had developed such a sour taste, you also turned away from music. And that was natural, right? Sometimes we do that. I was playing guitar for many years and my dad died. And in the Jewish faith tradition, you don't play music, an instrument, for the year that a parent has died. And I took off that year and I never went back. And sometimes I think about it, but I know that I left it for a lot of reasons. But his death at that time, music was very associated with my father in my life. So it was something that actually hurt me too much to go back to because it became entwined with his loss. So there's a lot of reasons we move away from things, but it's almost always to help us, not harm us. It's always in the moment to make things easier, not worse, to make us feel better, to give us some sense of feeling we have some agency or power instead of being swallowed whole by the system. How does that land?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, honestly.
Yeah.
It's some things that I'm going to have to sit with and re-listen to this podcast episode for. What's the reframe in these moments where you catch these moments of I wish and regret?
So the first thing to notice is that to notice the state you're in when you're going through this, right? I mean, that's really foundational for me because, as we so often say here, state drives story. So if I'm in that shutdown collapse, that low energy state, where I can be spacey, withdrawn, numb, feeling a little dark, despairing, dissociated, feigned death, that can be anywhere in that continuum. Then if I'm in that space, my inner experience, my narrative, the story that I will be hearing is one of negativity. I'm bad. It's not going to work. My family's bad. No one loves me. I'm here all alone. We go through and through and through a very, very painful place. So often when we're in the regret in the rearview mirror phase, most of us are at that time, we have a bunch of our nervous system in that shutdown and collapse area. That's giving the negativity. And then we're also sometimes sourcing a bit of sympathetic, either fight or flight, along with it. If we have flight mixed with it, we have anxious about we're going to get caught for this, or someone's going to see that we're a phony, or we made a horrible mistake and I can't show anyone. If it's anger, it has more the tone of anger. Who do I blame for this? All right, I'm going to be furious with myself, or I'm going to be furious with my caregivers, but I got to be angry at someone. Someone let me down. Someone did this. And whoever the culprit is, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. So it's mixed in, but shame is the driver. And so the alchemy, if you will, the way that we transform this is, number one, seeing it for what it is. Because if I'm in a shutdown and collapse space, everything I'm going to be thinking and saying to myself is going to be colored by a kind of negativity that's just the result of the state. It's not the result of reality, right? And the next morning, if I wake up and I'm in a different space, if I'm more regulated or happy and in a good mood, I may look at the exact same thing and instead say, you know, I have such a rich life. If I hadn't left school, I would not have run into all these other blessings that have sharpened my gift in so many ways, right? I can see it more whole. Yeah, I mean, I would be in a different place if I had continued with my music, but I believe I needed to leave it to come back. And now I'm getting signals from my body, from my nervous system, that I want to reclaim something. I want to re-own something of my heart and something of my abilities. And ultimately, right, here's the further thing. You want to offer it as a gift, which is an act of connecting with others, but also offering of service, right? And I know that that's a very central part of who you are, is wanting to be of service, of helping others. So it feels like this is a way of now finding a way to do that, but perhaps by adding music in, right? And I think that, you know, we can learn some things when we are looking through our rear view lens and looking at our past and then judging it. But it's really important to do it very, very lightly, and to know that when you're in that state, you will not be seeing things objectively. They will always be tinged more negatively than they would be seen if you're not dysregulated.
Are the moments of regret always that obvious? Do you catch your glance as you look in the rearview mirror that you have these statements of "I wish this" or "Why did this happen?" I guess I'm trying to unpack like the ways that this might show up in other ways in our life that is really just another version of this. Like, are there subtler forms of this that might show up for people?
Yeah, I mean, people don't have to look back in the past and decisions. They can say, why did I keep talking at lunch today? Why did I go on for so long at the phone call with Betty? Why did I seem so sharp? In other words, shame is a full-time employer and will be happy to keep you busy 24/7 in any situation. You don't even have to remember your past for shame to help you feel bad about something now. Why did you eat this morning? Right? It doesn't have to be a decision that changed our life. You slept late. You took the wrong route to work. It can be 1,000 things. I shouldn't have said that to John. There's no way I should have greeted him and then said that sentence. These little things that we do, but if you notice them, they are all felt with a quality of distress and blame. We're feeling agitated and not good, and we're also feeling at fault that we have done something, said something wrong. And that's where our regret comes from. It's a version of shame. Now, That's not to say we can't have some regret over time. I regret when I was younger that I was much more expressive about my anger than I am now. And I know that I could have caused people's feelings to be hurt in relationships. But I don't hate myself for being that way. That's how I was. And, I mean, sometimes if you're an asshole, it takes a bunch of years to grow up and not be one. I'm still working on it. But the idea is that I could fall into shame about that. Or I could see it from regulation that, yeah, okay, like those were not qualities I was happy with, but my background and my trauma, they're certainly understandable. Doesn't excuse them, but it does help me understand why. But then I can do something about them. I mean, I can't go back. I could to make amends, but I can't go back and undo something. I can't unring a bell. And what I can do is continue to be different and respond differently now, closer to how I want to be. Right. But again, I had to work. I mean, a lot of my shame is what actually got me to get so angry. Because if someone blamed me for something, I was really dysregulated because they were implying I'd done something wrong. If I'd done something wrong, I was a total shit. It's not like I had room to say, oh, you just did something wrong, but you're a great person. It would go all the way to the other extreme. And I would either get smashed in shame about it or I'd get angry about it, or sometimes both.
I'm seeing these connections that I want you to help me clarify in this triangle that's coming in my mind with shame, blame, and regret.
They are all related, that there's different kinds of regret. There is a regret that we can feel. It's, I regret that. But then there's a regret that spills into shame. I was horrible for saying that. How could I have said that? What kind of person am I if I said that or did that? It goes beyond regret to seeing no value. That's why I was trying to say, most people, when they're in regret through the rearview mirror, they're only seeing the storied negatives of their decision and their fallout and believing that those are true. And if you can begin to see that your decisions have always been made in an effort to keep you safe, not to keep you happy or fulfilled or fully actualized as a human being, but to keep your heart beating, to keep your brain capable, to get your genes to the next generation. That's it, right? That's all that your nervous system really cares about. And so it's going to do anything it can to prevent you from getting eaten alive, but it's not going to do anything to make you happy. Your nervous system has no idea about how to support happiness. That's not its job. That's our job, to begin to notice and to build the capacity, to find and realize our contentment and our joy that's already inside. Sometimes we're so locked in regret, recriminations, that we don't see the present. We're only sort of mired in the past in a way of seeing how much we failed and it's unsolvable. And we stay very far from life. And we also stay far from, like, if you're upset with yourself about leaving music, makes you so upset with yourself that you can't turn back towards music, then now your shame and blame about leaving, now that is what's going to continue to keep you out, right? Otherwise, you could find ways of bringing music back in that fit now, right? That reflect who you are now, what your heart wants to do now, what you're interested in exploring.
As you're sharing, it's occurring to me, at least the times in my life that I've justified, maybe falsely, the decisions I've made. As what? Is that like another way of protecting me?
It can be. We often create rationales for why we do stuff because we like to think we're rational human beings, but we're not. We make decisions emotionally, and then we usually create the rationale afterwards. Um, and that's again because our nervous system is primary when we move towards a defensive state. It's not uh, how we think, like, oh, I think I should get anxious now. It happens much quicker than thought. And it's an automatic reaction to what we perceive as the lack of safety and how dangerous that lack of safety is. A moderate to high amount of danger, we go into fight or flight. An overwhelming amount of danger, we go into shutdown and collapse. But anytime we're in those states, we're not seeing the world as it is. We're seeing the world as we are.
So give us some signposts when some of those stories we tell ourselves are um, maybe constructed from a standpoint of trying to keep us safe.
So it can help, like we did, to revisit the fuller context of why you made that decision, so that someone can see, oh, I wasn't just being impulsive. I actually thought about this for a while. Or there was a real pressure, time pressure that I had to decide. Or, if people can take a moment to actually look at the decision process the best that they can, they'll find that they were probably doing their best to make the best, safest decision at the time, whether it was to please somebody else or to please themselves or take the path of least resistance, that it was chosen because it was felt to be safer, not because you're a coward or not because you can't face your strength or owning your gifts. You were reacting to a process that was squishing out what was unique about what was Steve in you, right? And you want to find a way to bring Steve and music back together, but your way, not the way they drilled into you at school.
Where do you want to leave people? Or leave me, since this episode's fundamentally about me, apparently. Where do you want to leave us?
For you, I'd say, to see the fuller context of it, to understand that this was a decision that was also made to provide safety. And it may also satisfy some other things, like it didn't cost as much, or it meant you could be home, but the idea is the primary thing is the nervous system wasn't feeling safe. And by the way, it wasn't feeling safe being squished into someone you weren't. That's how it told you. It told you that what they were offering you and asking you to do didn't offer life or aliveness to you, didn't bring you forward, didn't bring this together and go, this is what I want to do with music. It was more like, what am I doing here? Right? So when you hold that context, you can say, oh, the decision wasn't really impulsive. And it's not like I could have stayed then. I also feel that by learning these other things that you've learned, right, you're more fully alive in what you know you can do and want to do. And I think that that's also a different place we can return to things versus our 20s, right? There's so much more choice. So for our audience, to explore the full context of why you made the decision, and to also notice that if it is tinged with blame and shame, anger and fear, or disappointment, then it's more than just an objective looking back at your past. This is being seen in a particular way to attack you or undermine you or to make you feel the familiar safety of feeling bad about you. Because there is an inherent safety in shame. There is an inherent safety in being mad at ourselves. Well, I'm a good person. I'm mad at myself, right? Somehow in our society, we have that connection. Well, if you can get upset with yourself and feel a lot of shame, you're a good person. Maybe miserable, but you're a good person, right?
I do hope this was helpful. I feel very much under the microscope, and I have these stories still rolling through my head that, like, oh man, I don't think anybody's going to care about this episode, but
You'll work with it.
I'll let that resonate and let that move through me and let it not let it get stuck. But aside from unpacking themes that you and I are really excited or interested or up or hot for either of us, the other thing we do is we take questions from our beautiful audience and listeners. And Jeffrey, how can people send their question in if they have something that they want your help unpacking?
Yeah, great. So folks, if you have a question, and we'd love for you to submit one, you can leave your question on our voicemail at 866-357-5156. That number is also in the show notes. You can leave your question there. If for some reason, if you're calling internationally and you can't reach that exchange, then feel free to send an email with an audio file or without, just your question typed, to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. Steve, thank you as always for being my partner, my producer, my very good friend, and a really willing participant in today's discussion. So thank you for telling us more about us than you probably were comfortable doing, but we love you, and it was really helpful.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's a testament to how much I trust you to be able to share that with you and a few thousand people. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that all with us.
My pleasure. Remember, folks, this podcast is for informational purposes only. And if you are struggling, please seek out qualified healthcare professional. Thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Until next time, bye for now.